We studied what is causing these fatalities using science and data and evidence, and then we slowly treated it like the public health problem it was, and it got reduced.
A Trump supporter walked into a town hall thinking he was about to corner Barack Obama on gun control. He came loaded with every single talking point you have heard 1,000 times before. Chicago, good guys with guns. Democrats want to take your firearms. The whole script, but what happened next is what Republicans absolutely cannot stand. Obama did not get emotional. He did not get defensive. He did not take the bait. He slowed the entire conversation down and systematically dismantled every single argument, piece by piece, using nothing but facts, logic, and common sense. Watch this in full, and I will give you my complete thoughts on the other side.
So good guys, why then do you and Hillary want to control and restrict and limit gun manufacturers, gun owners, and the responsible use of guns and ammunition to the rest of us, the good guys, instead of holding the bad guys accountable for their actions? And Mr. President, if I may, I'd like to use Chicago, your hometown, a city that has some of the strictest gun laws in the nation, a city that for decades and still is under Democratic control, a city that has an outrageous and even embarrassing murder rate as my first example. Why can't we round up these thugs, these drug dealers and gang members, and hold them accountable for their actions, or allow the good people in Chicago access to firearms to protect themselves?
Good. All right. Well, let me, it's a multi-part question, so let me just say a couple things. First of all, the notion that I or Hillary or Democrats or whoever you want to choose are hell-bent on taking away folks' guns is just not true. And I don't care how many times the NRA says it. I'm about to leave office. There have been more guns sold since I've been president than just about any time in U.S. history. There are enough guns for every man, woman, and child in this country. And at no point have I ever proposed confiscating guns from responsible gun owners. So it's just not true. What I have said is precisely what you suggested, which is, why don't we treat this like every other thing that we use? We used to have really bad auto fatality rates. The auto fatality rate has actually dropped precipitously, drastically, since I was a kid. Why is that? We decided we had seatbelt laws. We decided to have manufacturers put airbags in place. We decided to crack down on drunk driving and texting. We decided to redesign roads so that they were less likely to have a car bank. We studied what is causing these fatalities using science and data and evidence, and then we slowly treated it like the public health problem it was, and it got reduced. We are not allowed to do any of that when it comes to guns, because people, if you propose anything, it is suggested that we're trying to wipe away gun rights and impose tyranny and martial law. Do you know that Congress will not allow the Center for Disease Control to study gun violence? They're not allowed to study it because the notion is that by studying it the same way we do with traffic accidents, somehow that's going to lead to everybody's guns being confiscated. When we talked about background checks, if you buy a car, if you want to get a license, first of all, you got to get a license. You have to take a test. People have to know that you know how to drive. You don't have to do any of that with respect to buying a gun. And when we talked about doing effective background checks, it was resisted because the notion was we were going to take your guns away. I just came from a meeting today in the Situation Room in which I've got people who we know have been on ISIL websites, living here in the United States, U.S. citizens, and we're allowed to put them on the no-fly list when it comes to airlines. But because of the National Rifle Association, I cannot prohibit those people from buying a gun. This is somebody who is a known ISIL sympathizer, and if he wants to walk in to a gun store or a gun show right now and buy as many weapons as ammo as he can, nothing's prohibiting him from doing that, even though the FBI knows who that person is. So, sir, I just have to say respectfully that there is a way for us to have common sense gun laws. There is a way for us to make sure that lawful, responsible gun owners like yourself are able to use it for sporting, hunting, protecting yourself. But the only way we're going to do that is if we don't have a situation in which anything that is proposed is viewed as some tyrannical destruction of the Second Amendment. And that's how the issue too often gets framed.
If there is one thing that genuinely frustrates conservatives, it is when somebody takes their arguments seriously enough to actually respond to them with facts instead of matching their energy. Because the Trump supporter in that clip came in with maximum confidence. You could practically predict every sentence before he said it. Chicago Democrats want your guns. Good guys versus bad guys. It was the complete standard package, and Obama received it calmly, acknowledged it respectfully, and then took the whole thing apart from the foundation up. The first thing Obama did was address the biggest lie that has driven Republican gun politics for decades, the claim that Democrats are secretly plotting to confiscate every firearm in America. And he shut it down with one simple fact. Under his presidency, gun sales exploded. More guns were sold during his time in office than almost any comparable period in American history. Think about that. If Barack Obama was truly the anti-gun tyrant that the NRA spent years warning conservatives about, why were gun stores packed? Why were Americans buying weapons in record numbers? Because the confiscation narrative was never based in reality. It was always political theater, designed to keep people angry, keep them donating, and keep them voting out of fear rather than out of policy. Then came the car analogy, and this is where Obama really exposed the core contradiction at the heart of the entire debate. Nobody calls it government tyranny when you need a driver's license. Nobody screams about the collapse of freedom because cars are required to have seatbelts and airbags. Nobody claims martial law is coming because we have laws against drunk driving. We accept all of those regulations because we made a collective decision as a society that when something can kill people, we study the problem and we apply common sense solutions to reduce the harm. But the moment anyone suggests applying even a fraction of that same logic to firearms, the response is immediate and hysterical. Dictator, tyranny. They are coming for your guns. And Obama exposed how irrational that sounds when you place it next to literally any other public safety conversation we have as a country. But the most damning point in the entire exchange was the one about the CDC. Congress deliberately blocked the Centers for Disease Control from studying gun violence as a public health issue. Not reduced the funding, not limited the scope, blocked it entirely. In the wealthiest country on earth, with one of the highest rates of gun violence in the developed world, lawmakers fought actively against scientific research into the problem. And the reason they gave was that studying it might eventually lead to regulations. Let that sit for a moment. If your political position is so fragile that you are afraid of what the data might say, that is not a sign of a strong argument. That is a sign of people who already know what the research would find and do not want the public to see it. And then there was the ISIS point, which is the one conservatives never have a clean answer for. Republicans will spend all day talking about national security threats, terrorism, radical extremism, and the need to protect America at all costs. They support surveillance programs, travel restrictions, no-fly lists, and all manner of security measures in the name of keeping Americans safe. But the moment guns enter the conversation, suddenly even a person the FBI has flagged as a suspected terror sympathizer deserves unrestricted access to walk into any gun store and buy whatever they want. Obama said it plainly. The government could stop that same person from boarding a commercial flight, but could not stop them from purchasing an arsenal. There is no serious argument that makes that position coherent. There is no way to be genuinely tough on terrorism and simultaneously insist that suspected extremists must have unrestricted access to firearms. The contradiction is right there in the open, and the Republican machine has simply decided to never address it directly. What this clip really shows is how much of the modern conservative gun argument is built entirely on fear marketing rather than actual policy. The NRA spent years telling conservatives that background checks meant confiscation, that research meant tyranny, that any accountability at all meant the end of the Second Amendment, and it worked well enough that the conversation became impossible. One side was trying to discuss public health and policy. The other side had been trying to treat every single proposal as the opening scene of a dictatorship film. Obama was not arguing against responsible gun owners. He said it clearly and more than once. Lawful people should be able to own guns for hunting, sport, and self-defense. What he challenged was the idea that zero limits, zero research, zero oversight, and zero accountability somehow equals freedom. And that is the argument conservatives keep losing with the broader American public. Because most people do not believe background checks are extreme. Most people do not believe suspected terrorists should freely buy weapons. Most people do not think studying gun violence is controversial. The Republican machine keeps treating every modest reform like the apocalypse, and then wonders why they cannot hold the middle. Obama did not yell. He did not rant. He just calmly held up a mirror and let the argument speak for itself. And that is exactly why it still hits as hard today as it did when it happened. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification. I will see you in the next one.